So our reading from today comes from Edwene Gaines. And she says, "Why should we forgive the people who have done us wrong? After all, isn't there something satisfying about turning your back on someone who has behaved badly? Something powerful about cutting that person out of your life. Something comforting in knowing that he or she is really to blame for what's going on wrong in our lives. The truth is, no matter how good these emotions feel in the moment, they cannot and do not bring true and lasting happiness. Forgiveness frees us from the endless loop of blame and bad feelings that keep our minds focused on all the wrong things. With forgiveness, we let go of the past and turn to other, more important issues in our lives, such as how to be truly happy, to have the things we want, and to thrive with a sense that we are joyfully fulfilling our life's purpose. And so it is."
So welcome to those of you who may have just arrived in the sanctuary, and to those of you who are trying to mess me up, who usually sit on the right side, are now sitting on the left side. And there's more than one of you. I forgive you. Anyway, the theme for the month of December is happiness and fulfillment, and my talk title today is Our Need for Forgiveness. Now, forgiveness really means different things to different people. However, psychologists generally will define forgiveness as a conscious, deliberate choice to let go of or to release our feelings of resentment and vengeance toward a person or a group of people that have hurt us or have harmed us. Now, it is letting go of negative emotions with an increased ability to wish people well. The act that hurt us or the act that offended us, the act that is in the issue of our concern, might always be with us. But our forgiveness can lessen its grip on us and actually assist us to really, truly experience freedom and peace. Forgiveness is a choice. It's a choice that frees us to live our lives fully. It may also give the person that we forgive, and that, most importantly, as Cindy mentioned, is including ourselves, a chance to live in peace. Remember that everyone is doing the very best that they can at any given moment, given the upbringing and the conditioning and the experiences or the interpretation of the experiences that any one of us has had to date. Now, forgiveness can even lead to feelings of understanding, empathy, and compassion when we are coming from this understanding. If we don't practice forgiveness, again, it's our choice, but if we don't practice forgiveness, we might be the one that pays most dearly. Forgiveness brings a kind of peace that really washes over us and assists us to be able to go on with life, to leave that moment behind and to go forward in our lives. By embracing forgiveness, we can also embrace hope and gratitude and joy. Forgiveness can lead us down the path of physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. The act of forgiveness actually opens our hearts and allows for more positive movement in the evolution of actually everybody that's involved. To spiritually mature, we have to be willing to forgive. I'll say that again. To spiritually mature, we have to be willing to forgive. And like I always say, you can start with, I'm willing to be willing to be willing to forgive. Now, just as important as defining what forgiveness is, it is also very important for us to really be able to understand what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is different from condoning, which is failing to see the action as wrong and in need of forgiveness. Forgiveness is different from excusing, which is not holding the offender as responsible for the action. It's very different from forgetting, which is removing our awareness of the offense from our consciousness. And it is also different from reconciliation, which means a restoration of a relationship. So forgiveness is not letting the offender off the hook. We're not letting the offender off the hook. We're not letting them have a pass. We can and still should hold others to being accountable for their actions or their lack of action. It's not letting the offense reoccur time and time again. We don't have to tolerate, nor should we keep ourselves open to lack of respect or any other form of abuse. It's not the same as reconciling, though forgiveness can repair a damaged relationship, a damaged friendship. It doesn't. We are not obligated to reconcile with the person that we forgive. It's not an obligation. We can forgive someone even if we never can get along with them ever again. Forgiveness doesn't mean that we have to revert to being the victim. We're not saying, well, what you did was okay, so go ahead and just continue to walk all over me. We're not saying that. We're not playing the victim, nor is it playing the martyr, the person who enjoys the activity of forgiving because it perpetuates our victim consciousness. So it's not playing the victim. It's not playing the martyr. It doesn't mean forgetting. It's normal for memories to be triggered in the future. But when those memories or those thoughts of past occurrences occur, whenever they come up for us, then it's what we do with them, what we do with those thoughts in that moment that actually counts. It's not that past thing. It's what are we going to do with those thoughts in this moment. Forgiveness doesn't mean denying reality or ignoring repeated offenses. Some people are just plain obnoxious, mean-spirited, apathetic, and unreliable when they are operating from their lower selves, right? And we can all be there sometimes. We can all be there. They may never choose to change. So in order for us to really live our best life, we are the ones that need to change. We need to change the way that we respond to them. And we need to quit expecting them to be different. It might happen, but it might not. And if we want to live our best life, it's our responsibility, not theirs. Forgiveness is a process. It's not an event. It doesn't just happen one time and then that's it. It's a process. It happens over time for the most part. And it might take some time for us to be able to work through our emotions that we have around any situation so that we can truly forgive. And yet the invitation is to forgive as soon as we possibly can. This allows the power of forgiveness to empower us to recognize the pain that we suffered without letting that pain define us, and allowing us instead to heal and to move forward from that moment on. Forgiveness is not based on any other person's actions, but it's based on our own attitude. We can either stay stuck and angry, or we can begin to keep our minds focused on our loving relationship with God, knowing and trusting what is good. Forgiving does not mean that you forget or agree with the past, but it does mean that we release. We release that past and we move on. It's about taking our insights and the realizations that we get from the experience forward and releasing ourselves and any other people from indebtedness. When we forgive, we give ourselves the gift of life. The act of forgiveness releases us from the hold of the past or the hold of those circumstances surrounding that event, from the hold that those things have on us. We release ourselves from the burden of anger and pain and free up our energy so that we may really be able to experience life right now in this present moment. By not forgiving, anger, pain, regret, resentment can consume our lives. Think about those times when you've been upset and it's just running around and around and around in your mind, and it's getting worse by the minute. It just consumes our lives when we're in that space. Instead, forgiveness brings us peace of mind and frees us from this corrosive anger, this place that we can get ourselves into. While there is some debate over whether true forgiveness requires positive feelings about the offender, experts all agree that it really takes letting go of the deeply held negative ones. You may or may not have those, really positive, loving feelings about them anymore, but you can still forgive them without that. And it's really the only way that we're going to experience the peace that we desire, the peace that we really deserve. In an article called "Forgiveness is an Inside Job," Carly Hawk says, "The practice of forgiveness can feel totally counterintuitive sometimes. We think we find strength in our anger, but holding on to anger or resentment actually limits how we show up in the present because we are still feuding over our story. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pardoning an offense. It means acknowledging the grievance and the feelings it creates, acknowledging that people are wounded, flawed, and messy, including myself and you guys. Putting appropriate boundaries in place, letting go, and moving on. So the first step in forgiveness is actually this idea to acknowledge our experience, right? To be true to our human feelings by recognizing and acknowledging our hurt, our pain, our anger, our resentment, or the fear or doubt that may have arisen out of the experience itself. That is the first step. The second step is to identify any part that we might have had in this experience. And the invitation is to do it while you're being very self-compassionate. That it too is a process, and that it helps to be compassionate with ourselves, and it helps to take a moment to recognize any insights that we might have gotten out of it. And that is related very much to the third step, which is to look for the blessings in the situation. In the science of mind philosophy, life is always for us and never against us. You've probably heard us say that before. Life is always for us and never against us. So if that's the truth, then it is imperative to look for the blessings in any situation. And to look for that is kind of a twofold thing. What we're looking for is either how the situation is actually really good for us, or what the situation is spiritually calling forth from us. So the situation, I'll say that again, the situation is really good for us, or what is being called forth spiritually from us. Now, forgiveness is not always easy, but it is a choice that we can make, and we really must make it. Forgiveness is capable of producing some of the most profound transformation that you could ever hope for or ever imagine in your own lives and in the lives of other people. Forgiveness has the power to heal both our inner and our outer lives. It can change how we see ourselves and how we see others. It can change how we experience the world. It can bring to an end, once and for all, an end to these conflicts, this turmoil that exists within us, that we carry around with us every moment of every day. It could put an end to it once and for all. It is said that forgiveness is for ourselves and not for another, because the experience of not forgiving imprisons us. The experience of not forgiving actually poisons our own lives. Forgiving is not condoning the unloving or unjust actions on the part of anyone. It is simply choosing to not drag around the burden of the past into our present or into our future. The invitation is to really choose, to just consciously choose to let go of the old and to create a space for something new in your life, for something new to happen. The invitation is to be clear, really crystal clear about the freedom and the goodness that we want to experience. Have that be the mental equivalent of our lives. And then to finally forgive, release, and let go. You heard Edwene Gaines say in the reading today, forgiveness frees us from the endless loop of blame and bad feelings that keep our minds focused on all the wrong things. With forgiveness, we let go of the past and turn to other more important issues in our lives, such as how to be truly happy, to have the things that we want, and to thrive with a sense that we are joyfully fulfilling our life's purposes. Now, many of you know, but some of you do not know, that on the side of this lovely little job that I have here, I am also a physical therapist. And a few weeks ago, I was treating some patients at Duke. And one of my first patients of the day was this really lovely older woman, and I believe she was well into her 80s, and I want to say I think she was 88. And she and I established a connection, like right off the bat. And so it was really fun to be there and fun to be treating her, and she really wanted to be able to move better, and she was really wanting to participate. So as we were working together, we were having a conversation, and at one point in time, she mentioned to me that she had come here from Poland many years ago. Now, for 4 or 5 years, I went many times to Poland to teach physical therapy, and so I said, well, I have been to Poland many times. I love the Polish people. They are amazing. They are so filled with life and love, and they're so much fun to teach because they were just like sponges. They wanted to learn everything. And she said, I hate the Polish people. And I said, okay. Why do you hate the Polish people? And she said, because I'm Jewish, because of the Holocaust. I hate the German people too. I hate all Polish people, and I hate all German people. And I said, okay. And she said, well, don't you have anything more to say than okay? Is there anything on your mind that you want to tell me? And I said, well, yes, there is. You don't know who you're talking to. So I said, well, the only thing that I would like to say is that I would like for you in your life for there to be more freedom. I would like for you in your life to be more peace. And the only way that I believe that you can do that is if you forgive. And she said, you're probably right, but I don't know that I have the courage or the strength to do that. In order to forgive, we really need to be willing to release the past. In order to forgive, we really need to be willing to see the divine unfolding in all people, in all institutions, in all relationships, in all events, and in all experiences, even those that we experience as unpleasant. In order to forgive, we have to be willing to see perfection within what appears to be imperfection. In order to forgive, we need to have the heartfelt desire to be free. The heartfelt desire to be free, which means that you want to be free more than you want to be right. You want to be at peace more than you want to retaliate or enact some revenge. And as always, it is our choice. We can hold on to anger, resentment, and thoughts of revenge, or embrace forgiveness and move forward. In the Bible, Jesus often talks about forgiveness. Paul Farini has an entire ministry based on radical forgiveness. Forgiveness is one of Edwin Gaines's 4 spiritual laws of prosperity. Forgiveness is one of the Science of Mind 10 core concepts. It is that important. It is also, this idea of forgiveness is also one part of Ernest Holmes' What We Believe statements. And that particular statement says, we see a worldwide culture in which forgiveness, whether for errors, injustice, or debts, is the norm. The underlying Science of Mind point of view is that God only knows wholeness, perfection, and completion, only sees humankind as whole, perfect, and complete. God knows of nothing to forgive. Forgiveness is a human process by which we move from the idea of our separation from God to the idea of our recognition of our unity with God. From our separation from our good to the recognition of our unity with our good. Forgiveness is a shift in consciousness from fear to love. Forgiveness moves us out of victimhood into a recognition that life always supports us. It always supports us no matter what our human perceptions might be trying to tell us. There's 3 main talking points around this whole idea. And the first is that spirit only knows its own divine nature and it expresses its nature through all of its creation. There is only one, and we are inseparable from it. And a beautiful example of this is that the largest organism on earth is a fungus. It occupies 2,384 acres in the Blue Mountains of Oregon. So to put this in a different perspective, it literally covers 4 square miles. Now, what this organism does is that it pushes up mushrooms around all of the trees in the area. And it has also developed a way to span across all of this acreage with very little food supply. Now, each individual mushroom is unique. Each individual mushroom has its own characteristics, but it is still connected to the collective root system and is still considered one organism. So for those of you that have been around this center, around Science of Mind, for any length of time, this will sound very familiar to you. Many individualized expressions of one source. The second talking point is we live in a friendly and supportive universe. Anything that expresses in our experience is for our expanding good. And I will add whether we're aware of it in that moment or not. So often it takes a shift in our perspective to really be able to see that gift. It takes a shift in our perspective to really be able to feel that support. Now, the question to ask ourselves is, have we ever experienced a time when someone that we loved, either to our face or behind our backs, spoke a lot of, hooey about us, things that were unkind and that were mean, or perhaps we've had the experience that, someone in our family or someone of our coworkers or one of our friends did not do what they said they were going to do, what they heartfelt promised that they were going to do. And in that moment, in either of those situations or any other situation that you could come up with, you were devastated. Do you remember that feeling? Then, a little bit of time passes, and we begin to see the gift in the situation, and to know how really it was a pivotal point in our opportunity to see ourselves differently, to step into a new vision or a new version of ourselves or our lives. We may have even gotten to the point where we could really look back on that experience and to say that it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Michael Beckwith would say, "Thank you for giving me that experience." The truth is that life happens, and some of what we experience we would rather not have to experience. But we don't have to experience struggle. We don't have to stay stuck in that experience. We don't have to continue to keep giving our power away. It's not the situation, but what we say about the situation that really matters. It's not the situation itself, but our inability to forgive that continues to create struggle in our lives. The third talking point is forgiveness is a powerful spiritual tool to shift us from the idea of separation to the idea of our unity with God and our innate goodness. This kind of strength and courage that my little patient wished that she had can be witnessed in people who have been able to forgive in situations that most of us can't even believe that they lived through. In his book, The Book of Forgiving, The Fourfold Path for Healing Ourselves and Our World, Desmond Tutu talks about the long and treacherous journey of South Africa. He said that as the chairman of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, that he was often asked how the people of South Africa were able to forgive the atrocities and injustices that they suffered under the apartheid. Now, during the apartheid, South Africa was a country that literally institutionalized racism, inequality, and oppression. During the apartheid, only white people could vote. Only white people could earn a high-quality education. Only white people could expect advancement or opportunity. There were decades of protest and violence. Much blood was shed during the long march to freedom. When at last the leaders were finally released from prison, it was feared that South Africa's transition into democracy would be a bloodbath of revenge and retaliation. But miraculously, they chose another future. They chose forgiveness. They knew that telling the truth and healing their history was the only way to save their country from certain destruction. Desmond Tutu says, "I would like to share with you two simple truths. There is nothing that cannot be forgiven, and there is no one undeserving of forgiveness." Nothing that cannot be forgiven, and no one undeserving of forgiveness. When you can see and understand that we are all bound to one another, whether by birth, by circumstance, or simply by our shared humanity, then you will know this to be true. Without forgiveness, we will not thrive individually or collectively as a world community. Imagine the peace that could come to our planet if all of the people of the world were to let go of their past grievances. Imagine what could happen if we were to let go of all of the century-old battles over racial differences, religious differences, political differences, sexual differences, and past injuries to one another, and actually stood in our wholeness and our oneness. Reverend Dr. Ken Gordon, the spiritual directors of the Centers for Spiritual Living, says, to quote Mother Teresa, "We belong to each other. Through this connection, we see the devastating pain and discomfort that comes when we engage in behavior that breaks the bonds of that inherent spiritual connection. Now is the time to come together to feel our collective pain so that we may reestablish our sacred covenant of belonging to one another. Once established in this bond, we must act in accordance with it. This is not just a call to prayer, this is a call to act in affirmation of our sacred connection with the one life of all. This is a time to affirm that all life is sacred. And for me, this is reflected in our need for forgiveness. So the invitation today is to do the inner work, to be willing to stand in our unity with God and with all of life, to recognize our oneness and to honor and celebrate our differences, and to have the courage, the willingness to be forgiving, so that we can all individually and collectively move ahead in a way that creates a world that works for everyone. And so it is. Please turn within. With my eyes closed and my attention turned inward, I am acutely aware of that power and presence of peace, that power and presence of joy, that power and presence of wisdom, that power and presence of unconditional love that lives within me. I recognize its presence. I allow my awareness of it to expand within me and to spill out and fill this entire room. Knowing that God is always in this room, but in this moment, just expanding our awareness of it, so that we truly can live our lives from our deep and abiding connection to it. A connection that weaves itself throughout all of life, that connects us one to another and one to God. It cannot be broken. It cannot be separated. We can have a misconception that we are separate, but we can never truly be separate. And it is from that place of deep and abiding connection that I speak these words for each of us individually and collectively today, truly knowing that we are spiritual beings having a human incarnation, that we bring that spirituality to everything we do and everything we are. And that when we think and act and create from that space, that everything is joyous, everything is peaceful, everything is loving, that we all get along with each other, that forgiveness is truly a way of life, and that perhaps even as God, who knows nothing to forgive, there could be a time in which there was nothing for us to forgive. And wouldn't that be amazing? A world that works for everyone all of the time. And so I claim ease and grace for us around this idea of forgiving, to be able to leave the past in the past and step powerfully into the now moment, to allow ourselves to feel our feelings and to know that they do not define us, to know that we do not have to stay stuck in them, that we can choose at any time to forgive, at any time to move forward. And I'm so grateful to know this truth and to speak these words. So grateful for the power of prayer, knowing that these words are loosed into a law that only ever says yes, that they are clothed in form even as I speak them. And so I speak them and I release them with love and gratitude and full expectation of their manifestation. And I invite each of us to anchor these words for ourselves and for each other and for our community and for the world, simply by saying, and so it is. Amen. Amen. Thank you all very much.